and welcome to the Philadelphia Asian American Film Festival. My name is Casey Quinn, and I am one of the programming directors here at PATH. I will be moderating our Q&A for the documentary feature film Ink and Linda, and we're excited to have the director, Stuart Paul, with us, as well as the title subjects, Linda Lack and Inksap. So to start off, can you all please go around and just give us a brief introduction about yourselves?
Yeah. So first off, thank you so much for having us here. So director Stuart Paul. I'm a screenwriter and been LA based pretty much all my life. And I am also a student of Linda Lack, which is how I came across this story and decided it needed to be filmed.
And I'm Linda Lack, PhD. I am a dancer, choreographer, have been dancer, choreographer, teacher, educator, lecturer, international lecturer on movement, etc., etc. I also became a street artist in my 70s. And lo and behold, how wonderful is that? And that's who I am.
And I am the artist known as Inksap, and that's all you need to know.
Wonderful. So you kind of already answered what my first question was going to be, which was like, how did you meet Ink and Linda? So can you talk a little bit more about that and what made you want to pursue a documentary about their friendship?
Yeah. So I was coming to Linda's classes, her hour-and-a-half classes, just to keep my body in shape. And one day she was bereft and said, "Hey, come look at this." And the front of the building was demolished. And because apparently a drunk driver had crashed into the building. And so she was just beside herself. You know, the space was all curtained off. And over the following months, you know, I would see sort of the repairs slowly starting to come together. And then one day I got here to the studio and she said, "You have to see this. You have to see this. Follow me." And she took me through the alley and showed me this piece of street art that had been pasted up on the board where her window used to be. And she just gushed over, you know, her connection and what this thing, you know, how she felt connected to this piece of art. And then, you know, a few weeks go by, and then at the end of class, she starts mentioning, "Oh, and you know what? I tracked down the artist." And then a few weeks after that, we met and we talked for 5 hours. And next week, you know what? We're going to go out and do street art together. I'm going to go out at midnight in my 70s and be climbing on buildings. And I was like, okay, that's a story. This, like, I could just hear the power of this connection they had in her voice before I'd ever met Inksap. And you could feel in the room as she described it, just like the power of those words that she was feeling was spreading to people. And so I thought if a film could spread that feeling to audiences, that would be a beautiful thing.
So I guess the film never would have been made had Linda not tracked down Ink and like been so persistent in like finding out who he was and like knowing more about his story. Linda, could you talk about what that process was like why you wanted to connect with the artist behind the street art that you found like so vehemently, and what your connection was like while you're responding via email, and with Ink, like what was your thought process when you like got an email from her and like she was asking all of these questions about you?
Well, let's both tell the story. First of all, art is work, and it's hard work. And there I had this incredibly beautiful, you have to understand, it was, the piece behind us is half of, or maybe a third of what this beautiful piece of art was. And not only that, it was obvious to me when I first saw it that it was either okay, Asian for sure, but Vietnamese or whatever mother, okay, leaving what looked like her village, okay, with babies in baskets, et cetera, et cetera. It was very moving on a heart level, and frankly, for me, on a political level at the time, in terms of things like immigration. And so I endeavored to get in touch with him partly because I wanted just to say, art is work. I took this down from the front of the building and I want to pay you for it, you know? And so I tried to get in touch. But what people have to realize is that this kind of art, this kind of street art is illegal. So he wasn't answering me. And I couldn't figure out why, and everybody around me educated me to the fact. I mean, I was sending emails, and some people in my community were trying to send him emails saying, please get in touch. Linda Lack would never, turn you in, et cetera, et cetera. But it took a long time to convince him that you go on about it.
Well, it took a while for her to convince me to get back in contact with you because I've had a lot of negative interactions with people who don't want the street art on their building or on wherever it is that I put it. I don't intend to put art in places to make it not beautiful. I tend to put art in places that will add to that space and make people think more about that space as a beautiful place. So, so with that being said, I just kind of don't interact with people when they get in contact with me. But it wasn't until not only you, but a few other people in your community had contacted me and said, hey, Linda is a great person. And on top of it, you're willing to buy the painting. So I was like, okay, well, then I shall make time and see who this person is, because I value people who want to take time in others, especially, knowing other people's story. And that, Linda, is something you're willing to do. And same here.
That's so beautiful. I feel like we as humans don't really try to connect with each other as much. So I really appreciated seeing how your friendship unfolded on screen. So Inksap, I've been wondering, what is the meaning behind your name? How did you choose it? Is it a stage name, I'm assuming? And just where did it come from?
Yeah, so the name Inksap, it came from being a plein air painter. So plein air painting is when one goes out into nature or a environmental area and they paint what is in front of them, plein air. So when I was painting in plein air, very frequently I would go out and use the tree sap on my paintings. And my friends and I would call it the Inksap painting method. So from there, I took that name. When I started doing street art, I defined some sort of name other than my own name to brand the art. And what better name than one that was given to you by your friends and the technique that you started doing.
That's really cool. I'm not sure what I was expecting when I asked that question, but that wasn't it. So your art seems to be inspired by your Vietnamese heritage. And as Linda mentioned, it evokes a strong feeling when someone looks at it. But in the documentary, you mentioned that you're not really emotional about your art. Can you talk about what you said, as well as what you feel like the meaning behind your street art is, and what you want people to get out of it?
Sure. So I'll break that down and I'll answer that in two ways. So the first way I'll answer it is the emotional part. I grew up in a household that really valued hard work over emotions, and through that coming of age, through that growing up, I always learned that I just had to work hard and really sometimes just throw my emotion to the side to get what I have to do done. So I use that in my own art now because, especially with street art is very much a impermanent thing, right? You put a piece of art out on the streets, you come back a day or two or a week later, it might not be there. So I continue to keep my emotion away from my art in order to push my art and keep it going. So a good word would be ephemeral to describe that, to describe the feeling I have for my art, street art specifically. And then the second answer to your question was, what is my art? What am I trying to convey in my art? A lot of my art has to do with connecting to family, and a lot of it is drawn from images of people in my family and people in different parts of the world. I think for me, growing up in a country where there's so many different kinds of people, so many awesome people, so many different kinds of people, it's hard to really sometimes connect with a certain group of people that look like you. So a lot of my art has merged towards capturing the feeling that you get when you're with your tribe, with your people, and that's part of why I did this project, because as much as I don't like to work with people that I don't know, when we worked together, we knew that there was a tribe that we had built together with this project, and it all aligns with what I want to do in art, and I'm sure it aligns with all of what we want to do in our own art.
That's beautiful. So before we get into the collaboration that we see on screen, Linda, can you talk a little bit more about your work with dance and movement and how what drew you to specializing in that medium?
Oh, well, I'm in my mid-70s, and I've been a dancer and a mover ever since I was about 5 years old. Some of us are put on this earth, I think, that here, I can't talk for Stu, he would have to, but I knew that I was put on this earth to move, to dance, to do that was what I was meant to do. And I've done it in very, very many different ways throughout a lifetime, both, choreographing, teaching, dancing, performing. I come from, we were talking about it here in the studio earlier today in one of the classes. I come from a background, a Martha Graham background, where I was born into a family that was a Graham family, dance Graham family. My aunt was Pearl Lang, and she's the person who took Martha Graham's solos when Martha was too old to move. And for those people who don't have a dance background, Martha Graham was just like the mother of modern dance in the United States. So I come from a deep dance background, but I've also been edgy, shall we say, about where I take that. So I've taken some of my dances into stream beds. I've taken them, now with Ink and with Stu out onto the streets of Los Angeles. It's for me always playing or pushing the edges. So I think the gods just plunked Ink and Stu down in my pathway so that I could one more time in my old age expand, where I took dance to. That's how that goes. I want to say one other thing about what he was talking about, and that is I didn't know this, but I found that what he does as street art is really, really exactly has the same ephemerality, is ephemeral, just like dance is. You make a dance, you do a dance, it's gone, okay, unless you're rehearsing it. He puts up street art, we put up street art, it's gone, and you never know how fast or when, So there's this kind of ephemeral, there's a thread there that made some understanding for both of us. The other reason I've been deeply involved in this is because, and I love to talk about it, is street art is it's not classist, you know? You don't have to pay the fee to go into a museum. You don't have to pay the fee to go to an art gallery or even be in that world, And it's the street art is for everybody, from the people who live on the streets to the people who walk their dogs by it, to the people who are deeply interested in taking tours of street art. And it makes a big difference. It's one of the reasons I stay involved.
So, Ink, you mentioned that you don't really collaborate with other people. So what made you want to collaborate with Linda, and like what about her and her movements inspire you to like capture her in your work?
So I think, or as Stu said earlier, when he had first saw, or when Linda had introduced him to the art, the feeling that Linda had towards the art, the excitement and just everything about it, I wanted to share that. We wanted to share that with our art, with the new street art that we were going to produce. If I remember correctly, kind of the general thesis of what we're trying to do was share that same feeling that you had that morning that you saw the art to other people in the community in the LA area. So that's why I wanted to work with Linda and Stu, because I knew there was something special about this project. I knew the way that she had felt about the art. That's something that not a lot of people get, especially from street art. So I took it upon myself to push that feeling and embrace it. Yeah, I mean, is there anything you want to add?
Well, and we keep pushing it. We keep pushing it. What do I mean by that? Since the documentary's been made, okay, and the other thing that since the documentary's been made, we now have a performance project that we have taken into galleries, that we took into Budapest, that we're probably taking into libraries, universities, whoever will have us, art galleries. And what it does is we show the documentary, there's a Q&A, and then Inksap and I get down on the floor and we show how the art is made. And usually Inksap's art is surrounding the whole thing. It's been very unusual where we are crossing the boundaries of 3 separate disciplines, okay? And melding the 2, 3 that it is, and even, you know, have made it into a 4th with this performative project that is touring and traveling.
Did you ever think that this collaboration would get this far? Like how blown up it has become?
No.
Because that sounds so impressive.
You know, we look at each other, and go, this is really happening. You know, no, listen, you know, when I turned 75, if you had told me that I was going to be climbing buildings and climbing buildings in Los Angeles, et cetera, I would have said, you're crazy, you know? And here we are, crazy wonderful, right? Yeah.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. Because, I mean, I had faith in the vision that we were all pursuing, and I felt it, and I knew that if it was done well, this type of thing would happen. And I definitely doubted along the way, like, because it's hard to, you know, take like this ephemeral feeling, this emotion between you two, and then do that justice in a film and a narrative. Yep. But I'm pleased, but I'm not surprised.
And both of these gentlemen, all right, it is on Inksap's part. I'm here to tell you, because many people have tried with me, it is very hard to capture movement on a piece of paper. It is very hard to do, and very few people can, and he does. On this gentleman's part, it is very hard to spontaneously capture the emotional intimacy between 2 people, whoever they are, you know, without it being scripted, And one of the things that's happened in this documentary is many people say, oh, it's just wonderful. It's just wonderful, but it had to have been scripted. People just don't relate to one another that way. And it was not. He managed to capture that intimacy without ever even talking about it. Nothing was planned. Nothing was scripted. He just did it. And that's his, that's very hard to do.
That's also, it's trust.
Thank you. Thank you, Stu. Did you hear what he said? Trust.
Stu, could you actually talk a bit more about the filming process? I feel like a lot of events must have been like sudden or random, especially filming late at night, walking around filming them do illegal street art. So can you just talk about that?
Yeah, I largely, I had an understanding of the general way I thought the story would go just because, okay, I know who Linda, I learned more about who Linda is through making this movie, but I was like, okay, we'll figure out who Linda is, figure out who Inksap is, and I knew they were going to be melding those and creating something, so that suggests a certain structure. But yeah, there was no way to anticipate where things would go. I didn't know where they were going to go pick to put their art up. When I heard things like, hey, let's go climb on a building, I'm like, yeah, let's go climb on a building. There were the times, there was always keeping an eye out for, if somebody was coming, and there were definitely moments of people trying to shoo us away. And mostly the way that they get into the zone when they're with each other, I was in that flow too, so I was pretty much just wherever they were headed. I could feel that and kind of go along and flow with them, and just sort of go into whatever mode, or I felt like I'd have to this needs a different lens to capture. All right, swap it out real quick. So it was an intuitive process.
So while filming, did you, or not just filming, while Ink and Linda were putting up your art, did any of you ever fear the legal consequences of getting caught or having any serious repercussions of what you were doing?
The goal of the game is to not get caught. So we
got good at that.
We got good at it, yeah.
We got good at that. No, there's a whole technique to that. And Ink and I got to the point where we didn't have to talk with one another. And the technique that grew out of that was we cased the area. We found a place, sometimes his choice, sometimes mine, and we would look at it and watch everybody and what was going on. And we'd walk down the street and we would turn to one another. And if we both agreed that we could get away with this that night in this space, we knew it. We hardly had to talk. If one of us disagreed, we didn't try it. And so far, so good.
And if I could also add, it was referenced in the film, Linda is a great decoy. You don't often see a older lady going with the younger man into the streets at weird times of night putting up art. So it was always there's always a good balance between,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. 75-year-old women, in general, just don't do this. So when we're getting ready to look, and even when we're doing it, some people are very incredulized and they don't put it together real fast, because I can look very, passable and acceptable and yeah.
Yeah,
so I am. I'm a good decoy.
All right, and then add a camera onto the equation, and then
it looks official.
I was worried, concerned about some aspects of trespassing and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
since we're like recording this app, we're recording like things that are deemed a crime. But because we all knew why we were doing it, like it never really concerned me. I knew what we were doing felt pure, and I felt secure in that, LA has an art scene, like it's not like unheard of. I mean, my bigger concern was like breaking my back if I trying to climb down that building. But
We had some rough climbs, but it was all good. Everyone was safe at the end of it all.
Yeah, some of the shots did look precarious. And I'm scared of heights, so I wouldn't have been able to do that.
Me too.
So throughout your artistic collaboration, throughout the making of this film, what do you all think that you've learned about yourselves as well as each other?
I learned that collaboration is very important, and working with the right people is very important. And I think it's opened me to be more open to different projects and ideas. I mean, obviously, if I wasn't open to that in the first place, this wouldn't have happened. So that's what I learned. And what I learned about these two is that they are just as crazy as I am.
And that's what it takes.
Yeah, that's what it takes. That's right.
Well, I had my heart opened, okay? Because I feel that this is a day and age when, groups of people are so separate and so polarized from one another. And it's very hard for me to live in a world like that. And this particular collaboration, et cetera, has, I think, made a point in the end that we didn't set out to do, but that is that people of different generations, people of different cultural backgrounds, people of different educational, I could go on and on and on, can and should be working together, talking with one another, and collaborating with one another. It's something I knew in my heart and my guts and always have, but this particular project and the interface with these two gentlemen has just made my world and a project that went out into the real world something that I just so deeply cherish and value, the statement that it makes.
In the same way that their relationship breaks out of a box of the way we think about people of different, walks of life. I felt like this movie broke me out of my own box of how I see myself. And it showed me kind of why I do what I do. The connection between people, the power that you can feel in an audience watching this movie, the feeling of actually love. These are why we tell stories. These are why I tell stories. So it showed me something about myself that I didn't know. And Linda just proved herself even more powerful than I already suspected she was. And my respect for Inksap just as an artist and a man has grown throughout the course of this. So,
Right back at you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your answers. So we're just about at time. My last question for all of you is, what's next? What are you working on, and how can we best support you?
Thank you for that. Well, again, we're mentioning that out of the documentary and the rest of this has grown a performance project that we are taking anywhere anybody will have us. Again, it could be universities, it could be art galleries, it could be, help me out here, it could be libraries we're going to be invited to all over. And so please hear that the performative project is really interesting. It's been done in a couple of places so far, and the feedback is wonderful. In terms of the rest of what we're doing, they're doing, et cetera. Oh, I would like to mention that Inksap's art is available, all right, online, some of the actual art from Project Us and other kinds of art. So that's going onward and forward. We're still interfacing with one another. And I'm teaching. And I teach all over the world on Zoom classes for people who want to move and who are interested in extending and deepening their possibilities and their well-being through movement. So that's mine. Go ahead if you like.
I certainly have more writing and film projects in the works. I have actually had an inspiration recently for another documentary, but the actually big news that they don't even know this. I'm going to share this with you right now.
Whoa, okay.
We're going to be on PBS.
We're going to be on PBS.
Wow, congrats.
Oh, right. You heard it first here. Really? When?
Sometime next year.
Oh, right. Okay.
And so.
And does that mean the documentary, or we're going to show up and do another Q&A? Probably, right?
Well,
who knows?
That's the documentary. But in terms of supporting that, if there is anybody watching this who would be interested in having like a virtual screening of the film, for in the Philadelphia area or East Coast, we'd be happy to do that and to try and start rallying the wagons for the PBS broadcast. Yeah.
It's exciting.
That is exciting.
Yeah, and we're online, inkandlinda.com. All of our socials are on there, our tags, so you can find us on there as well. And
watching that will let people know when it's on PBS or we're doing a performative project.
Yeah.
We're good about that. Kale is going to keep up with that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing the news with us too.
That was wonderful.
Yes. Now you can find me now. It won't be as difficult to.
Right.
So.
There you go. That was good.
Okay, well, that's the end of our time today. Thank you all for being here to dive a bit deeper into the film as well as your friendship. For the audience, PATH is hybrid this year, and we have more than 100 films available to stream online as well as some in-person events. So please check out path.org to get tickets. Thank you all again.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Yeah.